we're always going to experience some suffering, but not that deeper suffering of being attached to things that are impermanent and apparent. They're not real in essence. They're not the absolute reality. They're part of that apparent Maya.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions with Creative Mind. I'm Deborah Burt Maldonado. I'm here with Dr. Rob Maldonado.
Great to be here.
And we have another episode for you today on the psychology of transformation. But before we begin, I do want to remind you to please subscribe to our channel here. Click on the button here in the corner if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, or other podcast services, don't forget before you go to click subscribe so you do not miss a single episode.
Yeah, and it's springtime, so I wanted to dedicate this podcast to our listeners in the UK and, of course, our students in the UK and our mentors.
So we have a sponsored person for every episode now. So the episode today is, can you experience no mind?
Never mind, right?
Never you mind. Can you experience the state of no mind? And
Right.
if you're a no mind, how do you know you're experiencing it? So
Yeah.
interesting. Like we talked about the psychology of Jung in the past few episodes.
Yeah. So this is a good segue or kind of next step to thinking deeper of what is in the deeper mind and what we call the mind, and also what is consciousness. So Eastern philosophy and Eastern psychology, a lot of people don't understand that how we practice psychology in the modern world really comes from ancient sources. The Vedic philosophies already had an understanding of the ego, of sensory perception.
So Freud did make it all up?
They got a hold of some.
Was he reading some Eastern philosophy?
Yeah,
probably, right. And writers and literature.
That's right. That influenced them. And the Greeks, this is an interesting fact, the Greeks actually had contact with some of the yogis and Buddhist monks of India through Alexander the Great. When Alexander conquered parts of India, they actually built cities and communities, and there were Greek immigrants and some back and forth, and they influenced each other, of course. Anyway, so let's look at the psychology of transformation from those ancient sources and see how they match up to what we know nowadays.
And this is an Eastern perspective.
Absolutely. This comes from the Upanishads, from the Yoga Sutras, from the Bhagavad Gita, and the way we're presenting it is more from our understanding and how we see some of their terminology useful to our work, the work that we do in coaching. So, first of all, some of you who study yoga might be familiar with this term, Mano Maya Kosha. So manas means mind, or an aspect of the mind. And the way it's described in certain philosophies, the mana is the faculty driven by the emotions, as well as our likes and dislikes. Now, what does this remind us of in Western psychology?
Conditioning.
That's right, conditioning. The like and dislike, what we're attracted to and what we're repulsed by, as through our senses, is the power of conditioning. It's what conditions us. If you've ever seen how people train animals, dogs or tigers, when they perform an action that the trainer wants them to do, to repeat, they're rewarded, meaning they're reinforcing with a like. I like that. Here you go. And they like the food, so that that programming, that action is reinforced, meaning they're going to repeat it again. When you punish them and you give them a shock, or you isolate them, or you give them time out, whatever it is, anything that they do not like, that diminishes that behavior. Now, the environment itself is performing this experiment continuously with all of us, because we're continuously running into situations that we like and dislike. Now on social media, how is it set up?
Likes. And now they even have an angry one now. Like I remember when Facebook first came out, it was just like something, that's all you can do. And now you can like, or you can be angry, you can cry, you can say a prayer, or send a hug. But yeah, that angry one is funny.
That's right.
And so is gauging if you agree or not disagree with what someone posted, or agree that you're angry as well as along with the person you're posting. So so there's that conditioning element that's really driven by the senses. And so
Very
it's
much
like
so.
a more sensory, like the senses come in and we have almost like a prepackaged response from our early life. So we're not even making a choice, we're just reacting.
Yeah, so the ancients understood this principle of conditioning. Thousands of years ago, they understood this already, that as human beings, we're conditioned by our behaviors and the results of our behaviors. So this term of manas, of the mind, kind of receiving sensory information and being conditioned by it is an important one. The second principle it's called ahamkara, which simply means ego, or the ego maker, the I maker. This is where the ego comes from, or it was still used in Western psychology, the sense of I.
So just like an amoeba has that conditioning response, this I is more self-conscious? Or do you think like even an amoeba has a I?
Yes and no. It's not an I like we experience it, obviously, but they definitely have. I got to look out for number one, right?
My little cell. I
gotta survive and move away from the heat, something that's too hot or too cold, and move towards what's pleasant and nourishing.
So even a plant too will find its way to grow toward the sun, or like lean in a different way, or the ivy bends, to grow. So it has that kind of individual, but the way humans talk about the ego is a lot more, I don't know, intense, because it's like you're not only have a sense of I, but you also have a lot of memory to your past, and you're forward thinking, and you have planning and all these other functions that the ego has.
Yeah, it's tied to identity. So if you think, what are memories? They're a collection of thoughts, previous thoughts, and recording of those thoughts that give us a sense of identity. Almost like the shelves that we put up, right? And we put pictures and where we've been on vacations and...
Now it's only on our phone.
Well, you have the little Buddha up there, right?
Oh, yeah, my little Buddha.
That's part of your identity. You're saying, I identify with meditation. I identify with these Eastern thoughts. So anyway, the ego, this ahamkara, this I-making function of the mind is a very powerful part of our psychology. In the East, it was seen as a hindrance to liberation, because of that over-identification that happens. That we start to get comfortable and we think, I know who I am. I am this personality, this individual perspective that I experience every day. And the Eastern philosophy is saying, that's not who you are at all. That's simply a function of your mind. If you get stuck there, you're limiting yourself to a very narrow bandwidth of existence and reality. So the third one really kind of then opens up the vista for us.
So this is all the mind, part of the mind.
Part of the mind, yes. Going inward, going deeper into the mind, from the senses inward. So this, deeper than the ego, than the I, is this Bodhi mind. The Bodhi mind. Now, Bodhi is the root for Buddha, meaning awakening. So it's the awakening mind. And in Western psychology, unfortunately, this is neglected. It's not,
Unfortunately.
yeah, because we need it. And it's not really well understood. Maybe a little bit of what they mean by mindset or what they mean by metacognition, the ability to learn how to learn. But in the East, they really saw this as the key to self-awakening. The Bodhi mind, the awakening mind, had to be cultivated. In other words, it wasn't just there and you were automatically awake just because you have it. You have to cultivate it. And how do you cultivate it? Meditation.
So when we're meditating, we're actually allowing ourselves to start to self-inquiry.
That's
where
right.
we're looking at our thoughts and like examining ourselves and having that kind of reflectiveness.
Yes, but it wasn't a passive meditation. The Bodhi mind is this discriminatory function that allows us to discriminate what is real, what is true, and what is unreal and false.
So is it sort of like the executive functioning a little bit? Like kind of like rationale?
Yes,
decision,
pure
reasoning.
where you can detach yourself. You can kind of remove your ego.
You're not
it.
just in reaction mode. You're kind of like, okay. And we often see this after something happens. We go, oh, well, what about, you're weighing the options for the next decision. You look at the past that you reacted to and how can I approach this differently?
Yeah. I mean, we can look at the scientific method as an attempt to use this process, but often they still kind of get entangled with the ego.
But don't they usually they stumble upon the answer, don't they? A lot of times when they have something new they discover, it's kind of stumbled.
Yeah, true scientists, true artists, they're always using this Bodhi mind because they're allowing the unconscious to provide the answers. And that's part of it, that it's closer to what we call gut feelings, intuition, that sense of knowing something without having to test it out logically.
So we have the conditioned part of the mind, manas. We have the ego, which is sense of I. And then we have this bodhi, which is the intellect, which is we're discriminating mind. So we're not in reactive mode. It's like, oh, okay, let me weigh my options. Let me make a more logical decision instead of, just reactive. But then there's this other stage where it's no mind. And tell us about that, Rob.
Yeah, so the deeper than this Bodhi mind is we start to enter this realm of no thoughts. And there is and different schools use it in different ways. In some schools it's called the bliss mind, where you reach this state of kind of openness, no thoughts. You're kind of freed from. You're starting to be free from the conditioning of your individual mind.
So it's sort of, would it be the feeling when you first wake up in the morning and you're just kind of like before your mind starts kicking in, there's just kind of an awareness that you're awake and then your mind the noise starts tracking? Would that be that pure awareness?
Yes. And actually, we enter that state every 24 hours during sleep, during deep sleep. In dreaming, of course, we're very active and we're kind of living another experience in our dreams. But in deep sleep, we enter that blissful mind, which is very restorative. So this tells you something about meditation as well, that when you consciously enter this meditative state, very deep kind of restorative energy bubbles up from the ground of our being, which is pure consciousness. That in the Upanishads it says is sipping the nectar of immortality. that we're restored because we're touching the ground of our being, the essence of our being. Now, that deeper essence, that's what is called no mind. That deeper essence is pure awareness. No hint of individuality, no hint of thought, no hint of kind of any division of awareness.
So is this the place where basically when you're awake, then what I was saying is not that state?
When you're awake, there
So
can
the
be
example
no
I
mind.
just gave you, you said that's not it.
That's not it, because anytime there's
That's more the bodhi, like where you're kind of
Yeah.
clear and okay.
anytime you're discriminating, you're working with objects, either mental or perceptual objects. There's a split, right? There's the object, there's the perceived object, there's the perceiving, the action of perceiving, and then there's the perceiver.
So when you're in meditation, there's no way to reach that pure awareness. What you're saying is because you're saying that we're not awake when we experience it, only in deep sleep.
No. Meditation is precisely the art and practice of reaching this no mind state.
But can't you have that when you first awake, before your thoughts happen, that there is this kind of emptiness you feel? Like it doesn't last very long, but it's kind of a meditative state when you wake up. You're kind of like not, your eye hasn't completed going, you're Debbie, you're Rob, I'm back in my body.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That kind of first, would that be a kind of like you're aware, but you...
If you're aware of objects, you're already, there's objects in the perception, therefore there's a thought.
So even in meditation, you can be aware of objects, can't you?
That's right.
So you're not really in that state.
Well, that's not real meditation, though.
Okay.
That's preparation for meditation.
Okay. So in real meditation, how can someone experience that no objects in a conscious meditation because you're conscious of your body? Or is it like an advanced samadhi type of experience?
That's it.
Okay.
Samadhi. So in the Yoga Sutras, it begins with this idea that it says, yoga is the stilling of thoughts. So if we can think of an ocean, the waves on the ocean are our thoughts. It's moving, there's movement. And if we allow those waves to become still, then the ocean becomes clear, like a mirror. It reflects everything perfectly. So there is no kind of abstraction and distraction from the waves. So our thoughts, essentially the modifications of our mind, create like a static or those waveforms that disturb its true, or our ability to experience its true essence, which is pure awareness. So yoga, meditation, is the art of practicing stilling the mind so that we can experience that true essence, which is pure awareness.
And so what's the transformational element of that besides not having like a not stressful thought or not, it's like, what's the purpose besides like, oh, I feel good? Because a lot of therapists and working with people that, in psychology or coaches, they recommend meditation. So why? But a lot of times it's more stress relief and maybe like intuition and things like that. So this is different than developing your intuition. And what would be the no mind? What would be the benefit that someone would get?
Yeah. So there's two concepts that we need to understand for that. One is Maya, which is, let's say, a simple translation or a simple way of translating it into our world would be apparent reality, meaning it appears to us as a reality. We can see it, we can touch it, taste it, smell it, everything. So it appears to us as a reality. But in this philosophy, it's saying Maya is like a dance, a movement that appears real to us, but is not. It's more like a dream. So Maya is an important term to understand. And what the Upanishads and the Vedic philosophy says is the world for us is Maya. Now, it's not saying we're not experiencing it. It's not saying it doesn't exist. It's simply saying the way it exists for us is dreamlike. It's an appearance. It appears to our mind this way, in this incredibly realistic way. The other term is Atman or Brahman, which means pure awareness, untainted, unmoved by the experience of Maya. In other words, what happens in Maya
Stays in Maya.
stays in Maya, very much like Vegas.
It's like that never happened. The bachelor parties or bachelorette parties.
It will not
It's
damage.
Maya.
Yeah, it will not taint the pure awareness. The pure awareness remains pure. So if you think about these yoga systems and meditation systems, what they were aiming at is for you to realize that that's who you are, that you are the pure awareness, not the experience of Maya. Now, who experiences the Maya? The ego. How do we experience it? As conditioning, as this powerful desire to possess objects, or repulsion to get away from the things we don't like. Yeah. So the aim was to dissuade ourselves of the illusion that we are the individual ego.
So, in other words, if I can say it in a layman's terms, simplifying it, that this chitta, or the pure awareness, understanding that is truly our true nature, and that if we can understand that within ourselves, there's these thoughts and conditioning and ego and all these, and even intellect and decisions you can make that make Maya, that we are trying to take Maya less seriously, where we're not caught up in it as much. And so by us not getting caught up in the Maya of the world, we're also not getting caught up with our own life and our own thoughts and our own emotions, and that we are able to stand, like you said, in that immortality, that nectar of immortality, that we go to each night for sleep and have more a conscious experience of that. But you said that we can't experience no mind if we perceive objects. So I want to be a devil's advocate here and say, how does that work?
Yeah, so most of you have heard this idea that meditation is about stilling the mind, right? So let's take that premise that the mind can be stilled, which means that, okay, we sit down and we start to pay attention to our inner world. We close our eyes, or gently close our eyes, and we start to see that our mind is always thinking. It's always doing something, right? It's always thinking about what happened yesterday. Where am I sitting? How do I feel? Am I comfortable? Is it hot in the room? Is it cold? All this stuff. It's its nature to move, to generate thought.
To be in constant motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So meditation was this idea that, okay, if we're not necessarily these things, right, that there's an awareness that transcends the mind. Can we access that? Because then we can experience no mind by transcending the mind. So that we're not necessarily just trying to force the mind to be still, but we're
identifying with the part that isn't thought.
That's it.
We're not identifying with the thought.
We're not identifying
with thoughts and feelings.
Thoughts, yes. Therefore, we're able to experience what is the foundational ground that we're standing on as human beings, right? That we're aware and able to think. Once we get past the thoughts and emotions, we start to see that awareness itself is the foundation of the mind. It's what allows the mind to think and to perceive.
So by us letting go of everything, even our feelings being us, or the body being it's us, like our identity, so like kind of personalized, we start to move toward that higher principle.
That's right. If we think of this house, the space around it and the space which it occupies, what would happen to that space if we burned down the house?
Be breezier.
Would the space be burnt?
It wouldn't be touched.
It would be impeccable, still pure space. So it's a metaphor. We're not saying that consciousness is space, but we're saying that in the mind, in thinking about the mind, our individual mind is the house. Awareness, consciousness is the space in which the mind exists.
And outside and inside, and the
Yes.
awareness of beyond just the house. The house is kind of like, think about it, your personal ego,
That's it.
the body. And then that there's a space that's like fills everything, even in between the tiny, at the microscopic level, the plate. But we tend to not look at the empty space. We tend to look at the walls, and we look at the furniture, and we say, wow, we need a bigger television, or that's a new car I need in the front yard, or a new tree, or new weighted decor. What's that called? The flowers in the front, the landscaping, and all that to make it beautiful. And what we're really not looking at, remembering or being conscious of, is that emptiness, that space.
That space. That's why it's often referred to as emptiness. But what they mean is that it's this living space that is untainted, even if the house is burnt down, meaning the body is subject to illness, aging, and death. It doesn't matter. The true you, the real essence of who you are, is untouched by those elements.
And so how understanding this, I mean, obviously one podcast episode is not going to get you to pure awareness, but understanding this for me has helped me not get caught up in life. Like, even if I am conscious of objects and I am conscious of situations in my life, I understand it being Maya, and that for some reason that has given me so much peace, because, and it's not that it's not real, like it's an apparent reality, which means it's a changing reality. So when you see someone who cuts you at the line at Starbucks, you can label them as a bad person, but you don't know if they cut because they were running home because their spouse was sick or something they needed to go to, and they're not a bad person from that one act, but we tend to take things at face value in that moment, in that snapshot, and make a lot of assumptions of things. So seeing everything as Maya helps you drop the judgment of what you're seeing and help you see something maybe more universal, or maybe even more potential and more possibility in other people and in your current reality and what you're creating in your life.
Yeah, it certainly gives us a bigger perspective on our life, because if we're identifying with a body, man, we're going to be in trouble sooner or later, because the things we value and we use to prop our life up, they're going to change. If nothing else, right? At least they're going to be changing, which means we're always going to be having to reassess and reevaluate our life. But if you understand that you are this deeper awareness, that's the real you, the apparent reality of your ego and your body are subject to change, and that's their nature, then you can accept it on better terms, in a more sane way. It won't cause you as much suffering, I would say. There's always a little bit of course, because we're compassionate beings and we care for other people, we're always going to experience some suffering, but not that deeper suffering of being attached to things that are impermanent and apparent. They're not real in essence. They're not the absolute reality. They're part of that apparent Maya.
And so just to close this is why Jung's work was so groundbreaking, because it was bringing in that spiritual element, that no mind element, this idea of the self, this idea of the transpersonal psychology, versus just focusing on your conditioning and, breaking through fears, and which are great, that you will make some change. But this idea of bringing in these other elements of the no mind can help you transform in a more dramatic and lasting way. And you stop chasing shadows and chasing like mirages in the world, and you really see what's true. And then you're able to deal with the world in a more profound, meaningful way.
Yes. And fortunately, more and more people are interested in this deeper psychology.
Yes. So that's it for today's episode. Again, if you are listening to us and watching us on YouTube, there's a little button in the corner. Click it to subscribe. And also reminders for you who are listening to our podcast each week. Make sure you subscribe. And of course, if you'd like to leave us an honest review, we'd love to hear what you think of the show. Tell us what you're interested in and maybe suggestions for new topics. We'd love to hear. So on behalf of Rob and I, hope you have a great week. And thank you for tuning in to Soul Sessions.